Bantam Doubleday Dell Audio Publishing presents The Book of Honor by Ted Gupp. I remember the first time I stood before the Central Intelligence Agency's Wall of Honor. It was during the Gulf War, February 1991. As a reporter for Time magazine, I had come to interview an agency analyst, a specialist on Iraq. The interview was to be on deep background. I was not to reveal the analyst's name or link him to the CIA. I arrived a few minutes early. The guards at the entrance to the vast 258-acre compound in Langley, Virginia, had been expecting me. They keyed in my Social Security number, issued me a plastic badge, and pointed me in the direction of the headquarters building. Stern-faced guards, a hedge of steel spikes in the roadway, and a landscape bristling with half-concealed monitors encouraged me to stay on course. I remember entering the Stalin-esque headquarters building, some 1.4 million square feet of marble and pillars and row upon row of recessed lights. The lobby was cavernous and cool, almost sepulchral. I had written about the CIA before, but this was my first visit to its headquarters. Set into the floor of the lobby was a huge medallion of the agency seal, featuring a vigilant eagle and a compass rose whose radiating spokes represented the CIA's worldwide reach. Inscribed overhead on the south wall were words from Scripture, John 8:32. "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." There was no hint of irony about it, though daily covert officers trained in deception passed through the lobby, their identities a construct of lies intended to produce some greater truth. It was the north wall, though, that caught my eye. There, rising before me, was a field of black stars chiseled into white Vermont marble. To the left was the flag of the nation, to the right, the flag of the agency. I drew nearer. Above the stars were engraved these words, "In honor of those members of the Central Intelligence Agency who gave their lives in the service of the country." There were 5 rows of stars. One by one I counted them. 69 in all. Below the field of stars was a stainless steel and glass case. It was locked. Inside was a book. The Book of Honor, it was called, a tome as sacred to the agency as if it held a splinter of the true cross. It was a thin volume of rough-cut pages open to the center, a black braid tasseled at the end tucked into the valley between the open pages. In neat black letters were written the years that each CIA officer died. Beside the year, in some 29 cases, were inscribed the names of the fallen. I recognized 2, Richard Welch, gunned down in front of his house in Athens in 1975, and William F. Buckley, the Beirut station chief tortured to death in 1985. But beside most of the years, there were no names, just stars. 40 nameless stars, tiny as asterisks, each representing a covert officer killed on a CIA mission. These nameless stars spanned half a century. There was nothing to provide even a hint as to their identities. No month or day of death, no country or continent where they fell, and not a word to suggest the nature of their mission. All was veiled in secrecy. I stood transfixed as scores of CIA employees swept past me on their way to or from the security desk, oblivious to the quiet memorial. In the minutes before my agency escort arrived to take me to my interview, I took out a notebook and scribbled down the names and dates and stars in the Book of Honor. Who were these stars, I wondered? How and where had they died? What missions claimed their lives? The first nameless star had died in 1950. What secret could be so sensitive that after 5 decades his or her identity still could not be revealed? I wondered, too, about the families these covert officers left behind, whether they were free to speak of the loss of a loved one, or whether they were forced to grieve in silence. Were they told the truth of what had happened to their husbands or wives, sons or daughters? Did these stars, named and unnamed alike, represent unsung heroes, or were they perhaps saboteurs and assassins ensnared in their own schemes? And what, if anything, had the American people been told of these casualties? Had the U.S. government, perhaps the President himself, lied about their fates? I had seen many such memorials before. The FBI, DEA, State Department, and even Amtrak have memorial walls to those who died in service. But all of these identify their fallen and celebrate their sacrifices. The CIA's is different, a memorial to men and women who are faceless. How, I wondered, could a memorial purport to remember those who are unknown to all but a few? And what sort of person would be willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, the loss not only of life, but of identity as well? It was that notion of anonymity, even in death, that moved me. When I had finished jotting down the dates and names and stars, I tore the pages out of my spiral notebook and tucked them into the pocket of my jacket. I suspected even then that this wall, this book of honor, and these nameless stars would stay with me, that I would revisit them again and again until I had unraveled their secrets. But I also knew that scores of Washington reporters, all who covered the intelligence beat, had walked past this same memorial and had similar ambitions. The Book of Honor was one of Washington's most abiding mysteries. There was a reason the secret of the stars remained intact. That evening, when I returned home, I slipped the pages from my pocket into a manila folder and scribbled the words CIA Stars on the flap. Now and again, in the months and years after, I would pick at the story in my spare time. I made little progress. It would be 5 years before I could devote myself to it fully. I thought that I had been drawn to the story for the sheer journalistic challenge of it. This was, after all, the ultimate secret, the forbidden. I had broken secrets before, some of them extremely sensitive and hard to ferret out. In 1992, for example, I uncovered the existence of a top-secret government installation buried beneath an exclusive West Virginia resort, the Greenbrier. It was there that Congress was to go as a kind of government in exile in the event of an impending nuclear war. It had been one of the nation's most closely guarded secrets since its construction during the Eisenhower and Kennedy administrations 4 decades earlier. My article in the Washington Post led to its closure, and considerable embarrassment to Congress, which, but for a handful of senior members, had not been deemed trustworthy enough to have been informed of its existence. That, and other stories like it, had convinced me that all too often government had used secrecy to conceal a multitude of other sins it did not want to come to light. I had seen how secrets could take on a life of their own. In time, it was not foreign enemies, but domestic disclosure that the guardians of those secrets often feared most. But my fascination with the CIA's Book of Honor went well beyond the mere challenge posed by secrecy. The nameless stars weighed upon me in ways I did not yet understand. I felt a need to restore the names to those marked only by a star. I imagined myself to be their instrument.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?